Metal Mule. Engineered to be different.
This is Nick Sanders, and we're talking to Adventure Bike TV about this, that and the other in my life, such as it is. There we are. I suppose it's these two volumes, what are they, 340,000 words. Didn't start out like that. I didn't mean to write so much. I didn't know what was going to come out basically when I started writing it. I had absolutely no idea. I started off the first word and I took the second word, first step, second step, that sort of thing. And it all started to fit into place. I suddenly realised that this was a story that needed to be told. It wasn't a little bit like Lance Armstrong. It's not just about the bike. It's about the person behind the bike, of course, and the life involved in that person behind the bike. It's become very important to me, I guess, and I'm glad it's been told, and I'm getting a lot of response from people who've read it, and I think they've enjoyed the detail and the in-depth, accounts of my life. I think there's resonance, there's something there which they can relate to, they can empathise with the difficulties. This isn't been an easy life, and I think as a consequence of that it's made me simply what I am. No, I think not all the journeys have been record-breaking. In actual fact, Parallel World was, well, it was quick, but it wasn't a record-breaking journey. Now there was Parallel Coast, for example. I mean, I always call my journeys by a particular kind of conceptual name, like The Incredible Ride was when I went up and down the Americas very fast. That was a record-breaking journey, of course. The fastest man around the world, clearly, was had a particular feel to it, a fast feel, if you like. I don't think I've missed out at all. I think what I did was what I had to do at the time. I lived the life on the bike at that time as it needed to be lived. I needed record-breaking journeys to give me prominence, I suppose, and I needed to give the bikes, the particular type of bikes I was on, an added level of, or a layer of credence. You go on an R1, you don't ride it slowly, and I think the fact that I took it across the Nubian desert slowly, oddly enough, was added to the credence to the vehicle. Remember, I'm sponsored. I have a responsibility to my sponsors and to the people who supply me vehicles. It's very difficult when you have that kind of thing happen, and we've had been one or two other occasions when we've had accidents on the trips. It's inevitable. Riding a motorcycle is dangerous. It's inherently dangerous. All we can do is minimise the fateful consequences or the difficulties. We've got a doctor and a driver who's military trained, and myself with a vast amount of experience. So all we can do is provide the support to my riders in the best possible way, and that really kind of gives them the the confidence to enjoy their vacation or enjoy their, however they want to call it, their challenge. Yes, it's hard. It doesn't come easy, of course. One is compassionate. One has a heart, but we live in that world, and I intend to continue with it. Well, I think actually, to be honest, I may have to make some kind of retraction about the bikes because I'm not entirely sure that was the case or not, and I think there's a lot of people think that. That's the problem. A lot of people think there's an awful lot of backup to that project. And I may have to hold my hands up and say I was wrong about that, and we will do a retraction if need be. But that's not the point, that's not the big issue. I think it's to do with the fact that the Long Way Round project, and I knew this would cause a degree of controversy, and that's not a bad thing entirely. A lot of people say things, and I think perhaps I was writing something and I wanted to blow off a little bit of steam. It's quite hard, when the humbler members of the adventure fraternity, like myself, if you like, work very hard for 23 years and do extremely hard journeys without support, without film backup, all that sort of thing. And these chaps come along and all of a sudden, kind of take over really. And I think in some ways that's a good thing. I'm not against that. I think the concept was a good concept. I think what they did for the motorcycle industry was absolutely a good thing. No question about it, absolutely. But it's not the greatest thing. There are some very great adventures out there and very great journeys which don't get any coverage whatsoever. I think that's what I was trying to say really, that we are out there without backup, in dangerous situations, getting relatively little praise or, affection from the wider public. And sometimes it's hard, when you spend your whole life devoted to motorbiking and trying to be empathetic with your fellow rider, and especially when, in actual fact, there's no question about it, and this is my opinion, but I think my level of literature and style of writing is very involved. I was a bit disappointed with the standard of literature in the book, The Long Way Round, but I think I'm entitled to my opinion. And I think that, they deserved more, I think in that sense maybe it's a bit rushed. Maybe they should have got somebody to write it, maybe, or ghostwrite it or whatever. Maybe they wrote it themselves, but that was my criticism really as a writer, to be honest. I think what they did was, overall, was fine. But there are some very great projects out there too. Well, I grew up in the old-fashioned way, where Chris Bonnet and Ranulph Fiennes, Sir Robin Knox-Johnson, all these sort of people were doing their thing, and by and large they were doing it for the first time. I think there was a lot of firsts 30-odd years ago, much less so now. And now it seems to be possibly the fastest or the most extreme. I think the Red Bull organisation have taken over the concept of adventure. And in some ways, as far as young people are concerned, again, that's a good thing. I'm not against progress. I'm not a dinosaur. Just because I motorbike around the world doesn't mean to say I'm, the greatest of adventurers. I'm just part of a long line of people who do extreme stuff. Although I've done it for 33 years, I've motorbiked around the world 7 times after all. I don't think anyone else has done that. And I bicycle around the world, and I don't think anyone else has done that and motorbike around the world. I like the people like Robert Dunlop, for example. He was one of my heroes because he seemed to be such a modest man. Now, why isn't he an adventurer? Of course he is. He's an adventurer in speed. John McGuinness, they are a kind of adventurer just because they don't do what they're doing across India or across Delhi or whatever. Carl Fogarty doesn't ride along the length of Indonesia. Now, this is a kind of a fusion. This is something I can't quite explain quickly. But, there are adventurers in their own right. It's, what you call, what does adventure mean? Publishing books has become a lot easier. That doesn't mean to say the books are any better. There's a lot of boring books out there. A lot of waste of paper. People think because it's easy to publish a book or make a film, they're automatically a filmmaker or a publisher. It's not the case. My last book, but both the last books have taken me 2 years to write, and I've been writing more or less 8 hours a day. I'll sit all day sometimes crafting a sentence or working out a paragraph. Now, some of these people aren't doing that. They think you just write a book and that's it. It therefore becomes readable. I don't believe that's the case. And it's the same with filmmaking. You have to be very precise, a little Aspergic perhaps. You have to look at, making films to the nearest millisecond. You've got to cut and edit to a very fine, precise degree. Otherwise it can look just a tad shoddy. Having said that, I think it's great that everybody's making films. Good, why not? But the good filmmakers or the good films will eventually rise to the surface like cream in milk. And I think that generally applies to most things in life, but I could be wrong. Well, to a degree, for them to make it affordable for themselves. They don't have to buy into the big bikes. They can go off on a small bike, on a Honda 90 or a 125 or something which is affordable from the point of view of fuel economy, and also weight, if you're actually flying your bikes from continent to continent, if you're thinking about going around the world. Or really, you don't go around the world. Adventure's on your doorstep. It's up to you, it's up to that young person to come up with something maybe a bit unique, something new, and I'm absolutely in favour of that. If somebody wants to come and break my record, fine, but breaking records is expensive. I had a problem with the Incredible Ride when I was doing the length of the Americas. The previous incumbent of that record actually hired a private plane from Panama to Cartagena in Colombia, and that was something I felt I didn't want to have to do. That's just an extra $10,000 out of my budget. I refused to do, so I took a commercial flight and lost a bit of time, and therefore didn't quite get the record. So, you have to kind of pick and choose what you can afford, and then try and be unique, and then stick to it and believe in what you do. I think the point is it can be done. Absolutely, there's always something new, and I'd love to see young people doing it. It's hard to say really. I'm just about to sign a deal with Yamaha in Europe. and we shall see what that remains to do for me. It's called Destination Adventure. I'm sort of spearheading it, you know. I'm looking forward to see where that goes. I don't know where we're going with it yet. We've still got a lot of negotiations about whether I go away on a solo journey or whether it involves people coming to me to my expedition centre in Wales or whatever. But yes, there are lots of things I'm planning to do.
Metal Mule. Engineered to be different.